welcome everyone. My name is Iris Caldwell. I'm joined here by Rebecca Lynn, who works with me at the Energy Resources Center, and we are facilitating this roundtable series for CCAA partners in particular that are interested in using the rights-of-way geospatial habitat database. And today we're going to be leaning heavily on our field museum partners that helped develop the database. Mark Johnston and Don Morrison are going to be doing some demos and walking us through our topic of the day, which is importing data into the database and some of the different tools and options that are available for doing that type of data import. So just to get us started, I'm going to again kind of walk through our agenda for today. This is intended to be pretty informal. We are recording the session just so we can have the presentation piece available on our website, but we'll trim out any of the kind of back and forth discussion that we have. So feel free to ask any questions you have, even if you feel a little bit shy about asking them. We're going to talk through just generally kind of the resources again that are available to get started with the database, quick review of some of the key vocabulary that will be relevant for today. And then we're going to dive into the topic of importing data into the database. As I said, we'll have a short demo with some exciting shortcuts that Mark and Don are unveiling today to help make that process a little bit smoother for you, hopefully. We'll also talk a little bit about editing data once it's in the database, and then should have a good chunk of time at the end for just open Q&A or other discussion you'd like to have on this topic of importing data. And if we have time for other related database questions, we can also talk about that. A couple of just logistics items. I think everyone should be generally muted for at least particularly the presentation portion. So if you're not muted, just friendly reminder to mute yourself until you're ready to ask a question. As I said, we are recording the presentation and we'll have some time at the end for questions, although we won't include the Q&A piece in the recording that we post on the website unless it's a really juicy, good question that we feel like everyone would benefit from hearing in the recording. Okay, so a couple of just orientation, getting to the tutorials and resources for the database. Again, this is an important part of getting familiar with the database. First off, first step is to go to the Rights-of-Way Habitat Working Group webpage. From there, you want to get to the Geospatial Database webpage, which is under Tracking and Monitoring across the top menu bar. From there, there is a yellow submenu across the Geospatial Habitat Database page, and there is an option for tutorials and resources. If you click on that submenu option, it'll then take you to another subpage that has links to webinars, tutorials, and other resources. And so again, ahead of today's roundtable, we are encouraging you to check out the tutorial on data importing and exporting that's available under that tutorials menu right there. Again, a great place to find information about, again, some of the tools that we'll be talking about today, but also other video topics that we've recorded related to the database. A little bit of information about some of the common terms that we're going to be talking about. Generally, again, these are kind of GIS common terms. So if you're familiar with GIS, this is probably nothing earth-shattering, but just a quick orientation for those of you who are less GIS oriented. We have what we call our right-of-way database schema, which is a document that really goes detail by detail through the different fields or attributes that are included in the database, describing the purpose, any kind of key elements associated with those attributes. And so if you're going to be importing data into the database, the right-of-way database schema is an important aspect or important file that you'll be using potentially for that bulk upload. Generally, again, you'll hear us talking about feature classes. Feature classes are geographic features, so points, lines, polygons, that often are obviously used in geospatial databases, often can be linked to attributes. So you could, for instance, have a line that's representing a road center line, a polygon that's representing a parcel or a management area. Those are all types of features. The file geodatabase is a file in a folder where you can store, query, and manage a collection of both spatial, so those features, and non-spatial data, so the tables associated with those features. And then shapefiles, similar to a file geodatabase, is a group of files or set of files. However, this is only used typically to store features, so points, lines, or polygons. It does not have the associated non-spatial data associated with it. And also noted here that the attributes or field names associated with shapefiles are limited to 10 characters. So there's some limited data that can be associated with shapefiles. Mark or Don, anything you'd like to add or highlight about those terms we'll be using today?
I guess I could just say that the last point there that you were making about the 10 characters for a shapefile, when that comes into play, is if you're going from like an enterprise geodatabase or a file geodatabase and you save it out as a shapefile, those fields are going to get clipped down. So so that's common. When you go to then look at the attributes, you're going to see that the field name's been shrunken down, and if you have a lot of similar field names, it's going to be confusing to know which one's the right one. You know, if there's, you know, name underscore something, you know, and then there's another name underscore something, it's going to be hard to know what's what. So that's why it's good to work with the file geodatabase if that's where it's coming from.
Okay. Yep, that's helpful. I'll also just mention that the right-of-way database schema and then the file geodatabase template that we have for the right-of-way database are downloadable files. Again, you can access from our geospatial database webpage. So again, back to that yellow sub menu bar that we have on the geospatial database webpage, you can either individually download those files, or there's an option to kind of download the suite of tools and templates that would include the schema and the geodatabase template. Okay, a couple other just common terms, again, to make sure we're all on the same page as we're talking about importing data into the database. We have our main kind of feature types that are used in the database are management areas, sites, and pollinator scorecards. And the first two, again, can be used somewhat interchangeably. It kind of depends on how you want to define the areas that you're managing for habitat or defining as managed areas for habitat. Typically, we think of the management areas as large or multiple land areas where you're using a similar kind of programmatic practice, such as conservation mowing or maybe a targeted herbicide practice that you're saying, you know, this common practice or similar practices happening across these large swaths of land. So those management areas are all being kind of treated in a similar way. By comparison, a site can also be individual locations or multiple locations potentially. But this is where maybe you want to identify a unique or specific set of practices. So maybe you've done a unique type of feeding or a unique restoration type activity, something that's kind of discrete from what you're doing maybe elsewhere in your system. That would be what we would typically envision as a site or habitat site in the database. So think of those two, again, types of management areas and sites. And then our pollinator scorecard points are where you're taking monitoring locations. So if you're using the rights of way as habitat working group pollinator scorecard or another scorecard or monitoring assessment tool that can collect that monitoring data about the habitat quality, all of that can be stored as a pinpoint in the database, again, as a monitoring point or scorecard point. Here's just a quick visual representation of, again, what these different features might look like. Again, in kind of a spatial context, you can see these large kind of pink and blue areas are management areas. We have a couple of also linear or non-linear areas that are individual sites that maybe have a separate type of practice. And then all of these little stars are those monitoring points that are occurring, again, within either management areas or sites. Okay. That's about as much detail as I'm going to go into some of the common terms and, again, the features that we're using within the database. If you have specific questions on any of those things, feel free to drop them into the chat. But I do want to make sure we have plenty of time to get into our topic of interest today, which is data importing. So I am going to turn things over to Mark and Dawn.
Awesome. Thanks, Iris. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide. So there's different ways to get data into the database system. Probably a lot of you are already familiar with Survey 123, but that's going to be using mobile devices to directly get your data into the database system. And actually, you can use Survey 123 from the desktop too, but primarily the way of getting data in with Survey 123 is going to be your mobile devices when you're in the field. So, and we're going to go over that in a separate webinar like this. The second one here, quick import options, is what we're going to showcase today. So we have been hearing from some folks that it's been a little complicated for getting your features into the database, and so we wanted to show you kind of a really streamed down way of just getting the data in. So we're going to talk about that today. And then lastly is the bulk import tool. So that's so if you sort of did your homework for today, you might have seen the video on how to do the bulk import. And that's pretty well documented. We also have it in the guidelines that are on that website that Iris was highlighting, where you can download the guidelines and sort of go cookbook fashion through the import process. And I think in the next slide, we'll go through a little bit about what the bulk import tool is all about. So why would you use the bulk import instead of this quick, fast method that we're going to show you today? Well, the bulk import tool is really going to be much more advantageous if you have features and you have lots of management data that you want to put into the database system at the same time. If, however, you want to kind of upload your features and then later on go and sort of highlight the sites or the management areas and apply those practices, you working directly through the GIS. So in other words, with the tools we have, you could select sites, you could create programs and kind of put in line by line what all those management activities are. If you're doing that, then you might as well use the quick import. If instead you have a lot of existing data in tabular form and you want to pull that over, then you can use this bulk import process. And also part of the bulk import process, we kind of built in the backup process there, and we do recommend, even if you're going to work through this quick method that we're going to show you, it's probably a good idea to back up your data first, unless there's nothing in the database yet, and then you're not really risking deleting anything that's in there. So that's part of the backup process too. It's a series of tasks that include backing up and even doing a test import if you want to do that, and those are optional. As I mentioned, the homework that we were talking about is watching that video that's mentioned here, importing and exporting data in ArcGIS, so that tutorial. And then, yeah, it's in the user's guide. So let's go on to, let's see, any experiences to share. Okay, so let's pause here for a second and just see if, because I think we did ask, like, if folks have tried this out, to come with questions, and we can begin to address some of those now if there are any pressing questions. Or even not pressing.
maybe a start would be, has anyone successfully used the bulk import tool?
Yeah, and feel free to unmute or drop something in the chat.
Yeah.
Pause for awkward silence. Okay, well, should we, let's see, next slide is data importing. Oh no, things to remember. We can go to that, maybe that'll jog people's memory too. So we just wanted to put down some helpful information about some folks have gotten tripped up on things like some of the things that are listed here. So it's important when you're saving out files and accessing data through Pro, that your file names don't have any periods or spaces or numbers at the beginning of the file name. And similarly, when you're not only the file itself, but the whole folder path underneath it, you really don't want spaces in there. So the example here is like I'm working on the C drive. I've got a folder called geodata. Notice there's no space between geo and data, and ROW habitat data. I'm using underscores instead of spaces. Sometimes you can get away with spaces, but it's highly encouraged that you don't do that, because it can run into troubles when you are doing geoprocessing. Excuse me. Let's see, when importing features, sites, management areas, center lines, either keep the feature names blank or use unique names. So when you pull in the data, the database is totally happy and fine if you're just pulling in your shapes, and you can pull across whatever attributes you want to, or you can leave it blank. But if you do put something into, there's kind of a unique identifier associated with the names. And so you want those names to be unique if you do include them. If you don't, the database is like, okay, that's fine. We're not expecting any data there. But if there is data, it needs to be unique. So that's one thing that can kind of trip people up. If you include attributes with your features, try to match field names in the database to make the field matching process more straightforward. So basically, when you have data on your local system and you're trying to pull it into the database system, it can be a little confusing if the field names are different that you're pulling in than what's in the database. That being said, the example I'm going to show today, I am putting in field names that are different, just in case you are facing that situation. I'll show you how to do that. But it makes it a little more straightforward if your field names are the same from your local to the database. All right, and if your original data comes from a geodatabase, exporting to shapefile will truncate your field names. So that's what we were talking about earlier, that it's going to shorten those field names and make it a little more difficult to know what's what when you're trying to match things up. Yeah, so it's best to use the geodatabase directly, or the enterprise geodatabase directly, instead of converting it to a shapefile. So, and does that bring up any questions that anybody may have? And again, chat or unmute.
Before you guys left the house.
Is someone talking? I can hear that. Okay. Well, should we go to a demo, Iris?
Yeah, that sounds good.
All right, so I've pulled up ArcGIS Pro, and this is what it'll look like when you first open up the program. And the first thing I just want to make sure is look in your top right-hand corner and see if you're signed in with your rights away account or whatever account you have associated with the the geodatabase. So that'll be important. If you have multiple accounts, you'll need to do that. If you only have the one account, then you probably don't need to worry about it. The reason why that's important is the database or ArcGIS Pro is going to be looking for those groups that we have on the ArcGIS Online side. And you won't see those if you're logged in as the wrong user. Okay, I'm going to show you two things here. First, if just down at the lower left corner, settings. So if you were going to do sort of what's in the video, to do that sort of more advanced import, you would click on settings, and then you would go up here to open, and then portal, and now you're seeing all the groups that I have access to. So you should have access to these two at least, the demo group and the demo field group. Now the demo field group is not the one we want because that doesn't have the tools, it's the management one. So I could click on this right now and it would open up all those tools, and that sort of brings you into that process that the video goes into. However, we're doing the quick method this time, so this is going to be even easier. I'm going to go back to that same screen that we looked at before, and I could either start with a blank template or start with a map. I'm going to start with a map here. It's basically the same thing. It's just this opens up a map to begin with. And so I'm just going to give it a simple name here. Let's just call this RW demo. Okay, and that'll take it a minute because it's got to create a little geodatabase and pull up the map and everything. And then, so one thing is you're going to need to know like where your local data is stored. And so I'm going to start off by going to the catalog button over here at the bottom right. I'm clicking on catalog. If you don't have catalog showing up, you can go to view. And there's two catalogs here. There's catalog pane and catalog view. You want catalog pane. And so you would click on that, but since I've already got it open, it's already showing up there. And then you'll want to make a connection in your folder to your local data. So this row demo is just a generic database that it created for me when I opened up this project. But that's not where my local data is. So I've got to click on this button. It opened up on the other screen, so I'm dragging it back across. And then let's see, I just have something on my C drive here. So I'm just going to go, oops. So my data is in this row demo that I'm going to play with today. I hit OK to that, and now you see it's showing up over here. Probably should have given it a different name, but. And then just to sort of preview that, I'm going to add it to the map so I can make sure there really is some data there. So I just right click on it and say add to current map. And I'm going to do the same with the second one, add to current map. And so you can see I just have one feature in each of these two. So this is a really simple example. But there's a site which is in green. And note that sites, they can overlap with these, and probably in most cases will overlap with your management area if you're doing all of your rights of ways. Or maybe you're just doing sites, just only where you have the highest quality habitat, perhaps. But so we've got one example of each. Notice it comes in with random colors. So you can click on that symbol I just clicked on the symbol here. And over on the right, it's going to give me the option to give it a different color. So I'll just click on this black one. I can go to properties and give it my own color. So in the database, I think these things are I don't know what color they are, but I think they're green or something. I'm going to make it purple so it looks a little different. And then down the bottom, hitting apply. So this is all basic GIS. So sorry for people who are advanced, but I'll try to do this quickly. So I'm just gonna do the same over here, resymbolize. Make this like a dark red. All right, so again, these are just on my local system, right? So now how do I get this into the geodatabase? So I'm going to show you the super quick method is to come back to the catalog, and right in the middle here, it says portal. So I can click on portal. And then it says my groups. I'm going to click on that. And there's this content versus groups. It's a little more straightforward if you click on groups, and there you can see those familiar groups that we have. I'm going to go into the management group for the demo. And then there's all these different REST endpoints. And so the first one, this is like data that's going to the public dashboard. This one's tables that you'll want to use for administering your organization, like who the contact is, whether you want to do data sharing, things like that. That's where you could modify those things. But this is the one that has all your spatial data. So I'm just going to right click on that and say add to current map. And then that's going to add it to the catalog on the left here. You can see it showed up above my data here that I imported. And if I turn the sort of caret on it, it's going to show all the different data that's in there. Now I want my local data on top. So I'm going to create a group here. This is another sort of basic GIS function, but I selected both of these. I'm going to right click on it and go to group, just to make it a little more straightforward here. And then I slow click on that, and I'm going to give it a name here. Like I'm just going to call this local data. All right, and then I'm going to move it up to the top. Okay, so we got local data, and then if I turn the caret, I've got this REST org data. So that's where all the data, geodatabase data is. So let's zoom out. You should see when I do that data that's just sort of sitting in the geodatabase, the one that's, so I'll turn off my local data. I'm going to turn that caret again. So this is showing, you're seeing a lot of points for pollinator scorecard examples in here. If I zoom out even further, I think, yeah, there's stuff even up here and where we were just sort of messing around with creating some center lines. But okay, so we have a direct access to the geodatabase. And one thing that's really important to know is, like, if you're editing in here, you're actually making edits directly to the database. So if you delete something, it's deleted out of the geodatabase. It's a good idea, again, to have backups. And again, you can do that by following that video where it walks you through how to do a database backup. All right, so again, I'm getting back to like how to get to this import process. I'm going to come over to the catalog again and click on project. Actually, let's see, we already added the data. So I was going to add the data, but it's already here, our local data. So let me, I'm just going to zoom to this. So if I highlight it and say zoom to layer, all right, there's my local data. And I should now just be able to come up to the edit up here along the top. And I'm going to select. And so let's just select this management area here. And I'm just going to right click on it and say copy. And then if you go up here in the top left, there's a paste. But I want to click under the paste and say paste special. And then it's going to say, okay, what do you want to paste it into? And so here's, if I do the down caret, it's showing me all the things I can paste into. So I want to paste into my management areas in the database system, right? So I say okay to that. And it should just paste it right in. So now it's in there. See, it's symbolized differently now. If I turn off my local data, it's going to take a minute here. Okay, it finished its editing. So I turned off my local data, and now you can see it's actually in the geodatabase. You know, it symbolizes blue there. And I can hit clear to unselect it. So the data's in there, right? And I guess I'll do the same with the site. Let's see, turn that back on, turn this, I turned off the database, and I'll just grab this site. So I'll show you one more time. So now, oh, I'm actually gonna move here. I don't want to do that. Okay, I'm clicking on select, and I'm selecting it, right click, and copy. And again, go up here and paste special. And what did I do here? Oh, I don't have, so it's only giving me the one option. So why is that? It's because I forgot to turn it back on. So let's see. If I turn it on and click on it, let's see, I should now be able to do this again. Copy, paste special, sites. Okay, and there it is. There's the pink site showing up. Somebody put something in the chat here. Let's see. If a company maintains their own internal GIS systems and can add their data to those internal systems, what would be a benefit to the company or need to maintain the company's Monarch info in the geospatial database? So
Mark, I'm happy to take a crack at that if you'd like.
yeah, sure.
Yeah, it's a good question, Tracy, and a fair one. I think one that we've gotten before. I think there are a couple of benefits to kind of going to this extra step of getting the data transferred from your internal database system into the shared rights-of-way database system. For one, it's a way of aggregating data about habitat that's managed on energy and transportation lands in a shared and public or partially public database. One of the primary goals of the database is to, one, help us get a better understanding of how much habitat is out there on the energy and transportation landscape, how it's managed, the quality of that habitat. And so through this database, we're hoping that, again, those of you that have elaborate GIS database systems or other GIS tools would be willing to share that data to give us a fuller picture of what habitat across the landscape looks like. The other benefit is, again, you have kind of these public dashboards that you could point internal or external users to. The public dashboard that Mark just had up there wouldn't have any identifying information, so it wouldn't have your company name called out specifically, but would give you an opportunity to kind of point people to, this is a database where we're contributing our data on where and how we're managing habitat, as a way of, again, kind of supporting this broader understanding of habitat on the landscape. There's also the option to identify other right-of-way entities or right-of-way users of the database that you can share your information with. So once you have these management areas or sites identified, if there was a DOT in your area or another utility that you wanted to do a collaborative project with, if you both have these management areas or sites defined in the database, you can then turn or toggle on or off the ability to share those details with each other. And so that was the other big purpose of creating this database, was to support those types of collaborative conversations. Not to mention, again, there's the opportunity of, again, supporting CCIA tracking and monitoring and reporting as well.
Yeah, so this is that public dashboard, so that all the different organizations contributing their data shows up in this dashboard. And as Iris said, you're kind of anonymized in this data set. And then there's private dashboards that individual organizations have. And this is using the one for the demonstration organization. And I just wanted to pull this up so this area that we were doing the sample import is by Rockford here. So there you can see what I imported actually got into the database. Now I'm going to show you the downside of what I just did. And that is when I click on this, you're going to notice there's no management name. So none of the attributes came with it. So I'm going to show you another quick import method that's just a little bit more involved that will help us to get in data that's associated with those attributes. So we're going to go back.
And Mark, I would just add that with the copy and paste, you can do multiple features. I mean, you can do all of your management areas in one copy and paste. It's not a one feature at a time.
That's right. That's a really good point, Don. Yeah, so I could have copied a whole host of features and pasted them at the same time instead of just one at a time like I showed in this example. That's what you're talking about, right, Don?
Right. Yeah.
And Mark, I know you're about to give another example of how you can get some of the attribute data to come with it. But if you did do the copy paste method, and then you have these features but no attributes, is there a way once you're in the database system or ArcGIS Pro to go in and add those attributes kind of after they've been copied and pasted in?
You could, but I could come in and so like here, let me, oops, we got things popping up on my other screens. If I went in and hit select here and then open up the management area. So just like any other data layer in ArcGIS, this is going to be the same where I can go in and make edits to the table. So all I did was I right clicked on it and I said open attribute table. And then the one that I have highlighted, I can see by clicking here. And then I could go in here and sort of one by one go in and add those, let's say the name of this site or this management area. But obviously, if you have all that data associated with it, you're bringing in like say hundreds of records, you wouldn't want to do that, right? So this is, I'm going to show you the next method for doing that. Now, actually, I haven't tried this. I would imagine before I do that, if I had named my attributes identical to the geodatabase, then when I paste it, I think those attributes may have gone in directly. I think it probably would. But in my example, my attributes have different names to make it more complicated to maybe match your situation. So I'm going to show what that looks like. So, so first, I'm going to delete these out of the database so we can re-import them again. And I just select and I hit delete and it says, are you sure? And I say yes, and it's gone out of the database. Okay, but we still have our local copy. Okay, so now what I want you to do is go to geoprocessing. And so you may have a tab on the right here. If you don't, if it's not showing up, when I have to hit save or it's not going to actually delete it for real. Okay, so so if you don't see the geoprocessing pane, then you can come up here to view and click on geoprocessing and that will open it as well. And then this you'll just have to remember, and I assume we'll probably add this to the guidelines, but the append tool is what we're going to use. So just type in the word append. You're going to see a lot of different append options. You want just the basic one here. Double click on that. And if you've used the more in-depth tool, this is going to look really familiar to you because that's what it's pulling from, is this internal Esri tool called append. And so what I want to do is add the input data set. So let's import the management area. And then all I'm going to do is click and drag so I've got my mouse button down and I drop it. I could also get there by using this, but it just looks a little confusing. It's pulling up all those layers that are on the left-hand side. So sometimes it's easier to just drag and drop it in. Then it's gonna wants to know what my target database is over here. So that's gonna be the geodatabase system, right? I'll turn it on and you can see it's not in there currently. So that one also I'm going to just drag over and drop. And now I need to do this So if the fields are identical, you're good to go, but they're probably, they might not be, right? So you're going to use this option here that says use the field map to reconcile field differences. And then this is showing all the fields that are in the online geodatabase. And you don't have to populate all of these, you could just populate some of them. So that's what I'm going to do in the example here. So for area name, I have a field similar to that in mine. It's just called name instead of area name. So I'm going to click on name. So this drop down over here on the right is coming from my local data. So the field there is called name, and I hit add select. And then let's see, status. Instead of calling it status on mine, my local data, I think I called it activity. So I'm adding that one. The ownership type, I've got one of those too, but I called it ownership instead of ownership type. So I'm adding that one. And then I think there's a notes too. So I called it note instead of notes. Okay, so I've got all those mapped out, and then I just hit the run button here. And that's gonna, hopefully it should bring in our database, our new feature. And I can click on this while it's running. You can click on this view details. You can hover over it and it'll sort of have the window just kind of open temporarily, or you can click on it and it'll show it to you as it's going. So if there's any errors, you'd want to note those here. So that works. So that data's in there. And now the only difference from cutting and pasting it is now I should be able to see those attributes. So let's right click. And I'm gonna, again, select that one record. Oh, it's 0 selected. What did I do wrong? I think I selected the local one instead of the database one. There it is. So now there's some of these attributes are populated, like the management name is now there. The land ownership. So all those fields that I populated are now in there. And it should be that I can now just go back to that private dashboard, and I'll probably need to zoom out and zoom back in again. And now it's populated. So does anybody have any questions about that?
Just a quick comment, Mark, but
Sure.
definitely open to other questions, comments people have. But just to confirm, so you are on the private dashboard right now, where you were
Oh, yeah,
visualizing.
you pull that back up, sorry.
And that would be again available to, as just as you're doing, confirms the database is that your data is in the database. Just for comparison's sake, could you also switch to the public database?
I can, but what I'll tell you is it's actually not going to be there yet because so Don, the mastermind behind all the deeper end back end stuff, his system will go in and make those calculations overnight. So it's going to go in and find out. So that's an important point, is like you may put in a bunch of data and be like, hey, wait, it's not showing up here yet. Is that right, Don? That it's
yeah, that's exactly right, Mark. It's an overnight.
So tomorrow, we would see it tomorrow. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's in this Rockford area, but we happen to, there's already, data here previously. But to get your additional features that would be there are gonna not be in there until after 24 hours or so for the calculations. And you can see the feature itself will not show up here. It's just going to be more of like the count of like the acreage should go up. Because we're protecting the privacy of those polygon shapes themselves.
Right. So you get counted, but your details are a mystery, at least on the public dashboard. Yeah.
That's right. That's right. And that's both at the the county scale, and I think state here too, right? Yeah, so and then the state numbers would even go up too for so it sort of calculates that summary information at 2 different scales.
Okay, questions or comments?
Did I
in the
do any of
group?
that too fast or need to say anything again? Pop out of
Mark, could you again just highlight, so you just walked through 2 methods of kind of the quick import. Why again would someone take the extra effort of doing the bulk import that we have in the video tutorial and also in the user's guide?
Yeah, so if you have an enterprise geodatabase system, that's like similar to what the geodatabase system is that we're using to capture all this data. If you have something like that at your in your organization, a more advanced geodatabase system, you might have all kinds of associated tables that are like using foreign keys and things to match up a table with the spatial data. And in order to pull that data across, you really need to use that bulk import tool. So if you have a lot of management data and it's and you want to get that information into the database too, you're going to need to like do more of that sort of data matching process, not just with the spatial data, but also with your tables. And then there's you know, there's links between those tables and the spatial data, and so that has to be, you know, part of that process as you do that import. And that's what that bulk import tool is going to allow you to do.
I know we have just a couple other slides highlighting some of the options for data editing. But again, continue to think of if you have any questions or would like Mark to walk through any of the steps that he did. And we should have a couple minutes here at the end to return to that. But in the meantime, Mark, do you want to just walk through the data editing reminders?
Yeah, so what, sure, I can go back to sharing screens here. Oh, that's right, we have one slide here. So there's a couple different options for data editing. There's the data management tool. So if you don't have ArcGIS Pro and you want to do some editing, you can do some pretty limited, but some editing options through the web browser. Let me, and then the second one is through Pro, what we were just using. So let me pull that up real quick. Okay, so this is the, using the demo site, this is the data management web application. And in here, so what this does, one of the kind of neat things is it will show you if you have any errors in your data. And so if you click on the different icons up here, it's going to walk through what those different errors are that you're seeing. And I use, so errors can be pretty minor. It can mean, you know, that you don't have a program associated with your polygons or shapes. Or it could be that it's too big, or that it's crossing multiple states and we need it to be clipped, you know, to be accurately counting those acres on a per state basis. So there's different errors like that. And so just looking at, let's see, this is for lines, I guess center lines. We probably want to look at something more like polygons. So there's the categories are here. You can see what the different kinds of errors are. And then here's like the specific, oh, let's see, if I click on all errors, it's going to show me all of them. And you can click on any one of these and it'll sort of zoom to it and tell you what the error is associated with it. Again, some of these are, and these are just, you know, demos, so this isn't real data. But then if you wanted to go in and do some editing, there is a tool here, an edit tool, but this is where things get pretty limited. You're probably better off doing your edits in ArcGIS Pro if you have Pro and can work with it. But you can go in here and like I could delete this polygon and draw a new one, or I think I can change the shape. Honestly, I haven't played with this a lot. More easily though, you can go in and add or change attributes. And so that's what this is showing in red, like, hey, this is something that is required and it's not filled out. So you need to go in and fill those out.
And that's where you could put things like the date of last activity, like for conservation mowing, or the frequency of a vegetation management practice. Those sorts of updates could be easily done in this interface.
I don't know if that's true actually, because that's associated data, and I'm not sure if we can do all of that in here. Don, do you know if that's possible?
Yeah, I don't know if you can edit the tabular data here.
Because that's associated with your program.
Yeah,
maybe.
right.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
But this is more like, let's say you didn't assign the ownership or the what else, like if you needed to, I think ideally change the size of the shape or that kind of stuff, although I'm not seeing how to do that.
Or the status, if it was a proposed area versus one that's been implemented.
Exactly, yeah, right.
Yeah. Okay.
So, but this is another tool available to you, a little more limited. It's more focused on showing where those errors are and addressing them. And then after after you've gone in and made some edits, there's this option here to clean and validate. So you click on that and hit run. I'm not going to do it right now because it takes a while, but basically it will go through and rerun those. It'll check for those errors again and kind of remove errors that are no longer there. So that's what that tool is for. And then this is just for selecting different features.
Mark, I know that you had a couple of other things to remember about editing in our slide deck. Do we want to hop back over to that?
Yeah. Here, let me stop sharing again.
Is there anything else you want to say about editing in ArcGIS Pro? I'm sure there's a lot you could say about it. But
yeah, I was going to kind of show some of that, but I think we're a little short on time. But it's the same as, if you're familiar with Pro or familiar with editing in GIS in general, all those tools are available to you. So you can go in and change shapes, and any kind of edits that you need to do can be done there. So this is just some quick reminders that we showed this earlier, but the REST endpoint that you want to work with is the one that's called that REST org data. Let's see. Yeah, and then the other thing is to make sure that you have a backup of the data if there's important data in there. And probably if you're going in to import, you may have a local copy and you're fine if the data gets somehow deleted, but that's just something that you need to have as a caution, that any data changes that you're making in Pro are going to happen directly to the database, as opposed to if you're working through those tools in the data import process, you're first making a data set to then import, and there's a backup process sort of involved, and sort of reminds you to do that as you're going through those steps. Let's see, what's the next slide? Okay, so
yeah, so I think we have a couple minutes here again for any questions about, again, any of the steps or approaches that Mark walked through for data importing or editing. I'll just pause. Feel free to unmute or chat into the chat box. you found this helpful, if you'd like to see any more elaborate demos of any of the processes that Mark walked through, that's helpful to know as well.
Hi, this is Von Seal.
Thank you.
I appreciate just the couple of slides on editing. One of the things that, you know, for us, and I'm sure for a lot of the DOTs, is there's multiple hands on these management sites and management areas. And so we haven't really started hardcore putting data into the database yet. But my fear is that, you know, you feel you have your site and everything's in the database and you're feeling good that you've just accomplished something, and then somebody makes a management decision and they go out there and they mow your site completely to the ground. And so it's helpful to see that we have some editing options. And I just want to make sure that we do have a way, if we have to pull these acres out, what we have put in the database, that we will be able to pull those out without a bunch, you know, we don't want to give
Of
you guys
red tape.
Yeah.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
if that's possible with the two tools that you just showed us, then I'm excited about that.
Yeah. I think, and Mark, correct me if I'm wrong, but I mean, it simply could be as easy as deleting the feature, as you saw him do in one of the examples, or potentially adjusting the shape if you know a portion of it was affected or something. I think you could make those types of edits as well.
Great, that's very helpful. Thank you.
Right. We tried to make this as self-service as possible to make it easier for us primarily, but you should be able to do all that yourself.
Okay. I see we're right at the 4 o'clock time zone point. I do want to just flag a couple of other quick things. One is our upcoming topics. So we've been talking about importing today. Next month's roundtable in January, we're going to be talking about exporting. So how do you get the data out of the database? And particularly those of you who have monitoring data for the CCAA in the database, how can you get that data out in a way that supports your annual reporting for the Monarch CCAA program? So that'll be our topic for January. February, March, we have a couple of other topics around data sharing, so with other entities, and then monitoring and surveying in the field, and how you can use the database and supporting tools to support that. But since I know many of you are already starting to think about your CCAA report, I wanted to mention that there is a video tutorial on using the CCAA reporting tool. So again, you can go back to the resources page, tutorials and resources page, and watch that video tutorial that again walks you step by step through the process of pulling your monitoring data out of the database in the format that you can use for your CCAA report. So again, that resource is already available. We'll be talking in more detail about that at the January roundtable. We also will be posting a recording from today's webinar to the webpage. So stay tuned for that. Of course, if you have any questions in the meantime, feel free to reach out to us. Caroline's contact information is here on the slide. Also want to thank Mark and Don again for taking time to walk through those couple of demos, helping us put the content together for today's roundtable. And thank all of you for participating. And if you have, again, any questions or other suggestions for how we can support you, just let us know.